What's up, dudes and dudettes of the internet? My name's Seth, and we are back again for another Trove on Console tutorial. So today we're playing on the Xbox, but of course all of this stuff is going to end up applying to the PS4 players as well. How y'all doing today, folks? Hope you're doing fantastically wonderful. Hope this video makes your day even better, and I hope it ends up helping you out because I finally, like seriously, it took me like so long. We even had to take a couple breaks of episodes just to get to this point where we can finally end up crafting our own club card and starting our own club world. Now, let's see whether or not, because honestly speaking, I'm very late to the game right here. Can we end up making the club Team Pixel on the console? I very much doubt it. Maybe somebody didn't end up stealing it. It honestly depends if my fame precedes me even on the console version. Let's find out. Did somebody grab it? Oh, could not create it. Team Pixel name is already taken. Okay, so hashtag confirmed, everybody. Do not go to Team Pixel. Don't go to put props or anything like that. It's a liar's club. It's not the real one at all. It's a fake club. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna try and create the Jub club on console and see whether or not that one's been taken. Of course, that one wouldn't have been taken. Wrecked. Okay, so now we actually have our own club world. How do we actually go to our club world? At the Adventurers crafting table, craft a shadow tower. Oh, so we're gonna deal with shadow towers today. That's gonna be exciting. But I want to see, how do we actually get to our club? Aha, right in the top right, socials, clubs, and then we can end up joining the club. You can edit the messages of the day, not really gonna end up doing that. Details, there we go. Now we could end up going into the club menu itself. You can show offline, join member. What does join member mean? Does that mean like adding somebody to the game or something? Then there's promote, demote, and kick member is just a button all on its own. Don't accidentally click right trigger, folks. That's all I'm saying. Don't accidentally click left trigger either. Otherwise, you could just leave the club. But I want to show you this. So now we can actually warp to our club world. And this is going to end up being a world in itself that very much is like your cornerstone. But it's a world, so we actually get to, ew, this spawn point is uggles. I gotta get an alignment tool and reset that up. So the way that this is gonna work is this whole area right here is all completely customizable. You can change the whole world yourself. So I just want to say this right here, everybody. This is very exciting to see this right here. Like we are potentially, depending how long the Xbox Series ends up lasting, we are potentially making history right here. Mostly because I already ended up doing this with the other Trove series on PC, and I just still remember to this day our empty old little club world and how big it has gotten. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna end up getting very big on the console version, but needless to say, the Jub Club exists, everybody. So I gotta mostly find out, can you invite people on the console to a club world without with them being offline, or do you have to invite them some other way? Let's try and see if we can figure this out. Yeah, so you would actually have to invite somebody by their username or something to that effect. So I guess what I'm gonna have to try and do, and I'm just saying this like as Mr. YouTube here, is I'm probably gonna have to try and either friend people on Xbox Live that send me friend requests and then add them to the club if I get the chance, and then remove them after so that I can kind of perpetually add more and more people. Honestly, I don't know what's gonna happen with that. The other thing too that I'm honestly surprised about is the fact that we can't seem to, like, we can toggle the chat and we can set primary. Okay, so that little flag on the club right there means that it is going to be after our username. So other people in the world are going to actually be able to see ScythePlaysYT of Jub, right? So that's pretty cool. I gotta go and find a cornerstone now. This is really weird. There's like no cornerstones as far as the eye can see, except way out in the draw distance, but we're too slow. I don't want to go all the way out there. I should also mention that if you're wondering and wanting a little bit more details as to how the clubs end up operating and stuff like that, of course, links are in the description. I do have videos that explain in depth, like how exactly clubs work, how you actually deal with the permissions and stuff like that. Honestly speaking, I'm going to be very surprised to see how the different biome restrictions end up working, because just to kind of give a short summary, again, you'll have to refer to the other videos for that, but you can actually go into a club world and you can set a biome to be very specific building parameters. So you can set up like all the different ranks in the club worlds are as follows. There's just member. They generally can't really do anything. However, you can, of course, set a biome to be a member biome, which means that everybody who's a member of the clan is going to be able to build in it. Unfortunately, it means that people are going to be able to also grief stuff and steal all the items from it. I wouldn't recommend doing this. Then there is Architect as the next rank. Officer is the rank above that, and officers can invite people, they can kick people, they can promote, they can demote, up to officer and, or not officer, just architect and member, always under their rank. So the leader's the only person that can promote somebody up to officer, and then you can also promote somebody else up to leader. But I wouldn't recommend doing this unless it's somebody that you really trust or you just have an alternate account as backup. Because the leader can actually demote the other leader or even kick them and then just steal the whole club for themselves. And again, you can set the biome to be member, architect, officer, or just nobody can build in it. Officers are going to be able to change all the building privileges as well, so you got to be very careful about that. Speaking of which, rip me! I didn't need a cornerstone at all because you can't actually plop these portals down in a cornerstone. So let's drop that one down, and then let's also drop the sky portal down. Don't think we're gonna end up getting into the sky portal today. We'll see what ends up happening, but now I can finally explain to you all how the shadow tower ends up working. So when you open up the shadow tower, you're gonna see this menu right here. The way that it's gonna work is at the beginning of every week, these shadow towers are going to end up resetting. You can only complete them once a week, right? So there's going to be normal mode from Spike Walker, Weeping Prophet, Vengeful Pinata God to Daughter of the Moon. These are pretty much the only bosses in the entire game. And the way that it ends up working is if we end up loading up Spike Walker, you're going to have to complete 3 shadow arenas or dungeons. It kind of just varies week by week. And then you're going to get to the boss itself. I don't know if we're going to be able to handle this guy today, but we're going to definitely try to. However, you're going to need a shadow key in order to actually open these portals in the first place, which I'll explain that in a minute, because first I want to show you that you have to beat these bosses in a linear fashion. You cannot skip up to Weeping Prophet unless you've defeated Spike Walker, or if somebody else has already defeated Spike Walker and has loaded into Weeping Prophet, then you can end up joining them, they can invite you, and then you could just skip Spike Walker right to the boss, right? Now, one thing that's very, very important that lots of people don't know is if we could even handle hard mode in the first place, beating Spike Walker on hard mode is going to give you all the rewards from normal mode as well. So if we ever end up getting to the point where we end up being able to defeat Ultra, which I very much doubt anyone's going to get to that point for a very long time, but you would only need to defeat Ultra Spike Walker once a week rather than having to do normal, hard, and then ultra. You know what I'm saying? Now, also, you're going to see that it's going to cost... Wait, does it cost... Oh, it doesn't cost shadow keys. Never mind, rip me. I'm still thinking of the old shadow towers. So the way that it works is it's going to cost flux to open the portal. 50 flux here for all the normal ones, 250 for hard, and 500 for ultra, which of course at the late game that's not really gonna be that much. So anyway, let's open Spike Walker if I can. There we go. And what the shadow keys are, that is actually going to be for the loot once you defeat the boss. I'm still like, this is the one disadvantage of, because I've played this game for so long, is I still think in the old terms of how things used to be, right? So in order to get shadow keys or moon keys for hard mode, or the Eclipse keys for ultra mode, you're gonna have to go to normal primed adventure worlds, not elemental worlds, just the normal world. And like you saw when we were in U1 to 3, I don't know when it ends up changing, but for example, in U3, I was getting, do I have some in my inventory? These. I was getting some of these shadow key fragments. These can be forged at an adventurer's crafting table into a shadow key, which I'll show you what the treasure is once we get to the end. But then once you get up to a certain tier with the Uber portals, I forget if it's U5, maybe it's U6 or something like that, then you're going to end up getting moon fragments and so on and so forth, all the way up to the Eclipse key fragments, right? So the way that the shadows towers are going to work is, as you see right here, we're in just a normal shadow tower. And I have to explain and kind of stress a little bit about how the drop rates work. So killing all these random side enemies in a dungeon, a shadow dungeon, the difference between a shadow dungeon and a shadow arena is a shadow dungeon is going to be like a normal dungeon like we're doing right now, where we're fighting our way to the end. While a shadow arena is just going to drop you down in a room where you're going to activate a wave machine, that's what I call them anyways, and it's going to trigger like waves and waves of enemies that you're going to have to fight through. Now, we're going to end up doing something similar to that in this dungeon. The difference is that we actually have to fight our way to it. Now, all of these enemies in here, as you see, we're getting tons and tons of experience, and they also have chances to drop items. Most of all this comes into play in the late game because of the fact that you can actually get shadow items and radiance from them and stuff like that. However, if you activate the Cursed Skull, all these enemies that we're killing are not going to grant experience because they are associated with the quest itself, right? So the way these are going to work is now we're going to be fighting these special minions right here, and these guys are going to give me a little bit of trouble, honestly. My energy is just not regenning at all, and that's okay. I want to save my ult for the big bad guy because he's always waiting at the end. Now, if we were in a shadow arena, there would only be the one Cursed Skull that you activate once. You have to fight all the enemies all the way to the end, and then you end up fighting the mini boss, or, well, I guess he's a big guy, but he's just a standard boss enemy, nothing special about him. Or if we're in a dungeon like we are now, we come down into here, and then there we go, we just trigger him separately. Now, the reason why this is important is because most of all this happens when you get to hard mode or ultra mode. But shadow dungeons typically are a lot easier than the arenas because in the arena, you have to complete like a whole bunch of, I think it's like 8 different waves of enemies or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's not like I look at it that often. But needless to say, you're going to have to complete all those waves of enemies in one sitting while you're slowly losing potions, as opposed to this, where that first Cursed Skull we ended up defeating, once we defeated those enemies, we ended up refilling all of our flasks. We also refilled all our flasks after we beat this guy. So because of that, you don't have to be worrying as much about saving your flasks as you would in a shadow arena where we would have to fight all the way to the end, right? Now, this is something very, very important. You wouldn't think so, but this is actually, as far as I know, this is the only Shadow Tower dungeon where you can fish. And this is important because we haven't talked about the fishing yet. I am going to do a video on that, but I'm also going to be focusing that video on a lot of the ocean themed stuff like the pirate traders and stuff like that. So for the most part, I'm just going to say, keep this in mind, folks, because inside this arena, you're going to be able to fish, and you're going to be able to find a Shadow Tower specific ancient fish that can really end up getting out of this fishing pond. And I mean, ultimately, you're going to try and catch all of the fish that you can because you get lots and lots of mastery as well as special resource items out of them, right? Now, before we get to the next round, because as I said, we're going to have to deal with 3 of these. I'll probably skip the next 2 unless we end up getting an arena so I can just kind of show you what that is. But needless to say, the Shadowy market is the biggest reason why you end up coming to the Shadow Towers, right? Outside of Titan Souls and Lunar Souls, I'll elaborate on those in a minute. But anyway, you come to the Shadowy Merchant, and on the Shadow Market, you actually have to spend Shadow Shards for the Shadow Caches. You get Shadow Shards from defeating the boss and being able to use a Shadow Moon or Eclipse Key to open the boss chest, and you're going to end up gaining Shadow Shards out of that. However, in the higher tiered Shadow Portals, it's going to skip right over giving you Shadow Shards, and I guess it's kind of smart where if you're going to get more than 10 Shadow Shards from a boss chest, it's just automatically going to give you a Shadow Cache. Now, outside of a Shadow Cache, you end up very rarely getting Hearts of Darkness. And even rarer than that, you can actually get Shadow Wings, which, I mean, that's going to take a very long time before a console player gets that, or maybe somebody's already got it. But anyway, you can use these Hearts of Darkness on all these different things. They all give you mastery. These are just normal tomes, not legendary ones, meaning that you can grind these out continuously. Very, very good for new players for sure. The Chaos Rod, which doesn't actually let you do anything special over the normal rods as far as I know. A couple different allies, a couple mounts and stuff like that. And Generally speaking, you're going to eventually try to get all of these, but honestly, I would say get the Dream Brony because he's the coolest. Links are in the description so you can see all of these mounts and stuff like that in some mount preview videos that I have. Now, Titan Souls, the way that this is going to work is you're going to get a Titan Soul from defeating, you don't have to open the boss chest, you're going to get a Titan Soul from defeating Spikewalker, Weeping Prophet, and the Vengeful Pinata God, all right? And then you can spend them on a Titan's Treasure. What you end up getting rarely out of Titan's Treasure is Flux. That's pretty much all you're gonna get. So for the beginning of the game, I'm sure that this is going to be the absolute key to the in-game economy for the console version is just the Titan's Treasures, because you can get a lot of Flux out of them, right? Or you can spend it on a Shaper Star Key. Now this, we're not going to go into too much detail about this because this is late game. You don't need these for a very, very long time. You use these to craft Stellar Gear, which is moving from Radiant up to Stellar. And needless to say, I've got forging tutorials in the description as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. So new players, don't worry, you don't need to keep your Titan Souls unless you really want to save them to the end. But the whole thing is that you're going to end up needing a lot of these at the end game. So yeah, and the fact that you can only grind so many Titan Souls a week means that technically these Shaper Stars are not grindable. It means that you have to wait on a time limit to get Stellar Gear once you're at the late game, rather than being able to just grind it. Now, Daughter of the Moon, the final boss of the game, she is going to give you Lunar Souls when you defeat her. And then with that, you can get an Empowered Gem Box, which is going to drop Empowered Gems, which are pretty much, I kind of explained this, I think in the last video, maybe it was the one before it, where I explained the gem system. And empowered gems are going to be a requirement for sure. The difference between empowered gems and the normal small gems, though, is that an empowered gem is going to be able to have more stats overall, and it's also going to have a passive effect. So, you know, sometimes there might be one that make your shots explode when enemies die, and that one's actually very, very useful for almost all the ranged characters. Now, the one problem also with the empowered gems is if you have, let's say, an air gem and a water gem that both have the same conflicting power, you cannot equip both of them at once. You can only equip one of them. So if we would end up opening a couple empowered gem boxes and both gems have the same power, then unfortunately it would be kind of like a waste. Not to mention if you end up getting very unlucky and getting an empowered water gem and another empowered water gem, we'd only be able to use one. And then on top of that, they end up having to, you have to very luckily end up getting the right stats for those gems, which is wherein the end game of Trove ends up coming up, and honestly speaking, where most people end up quitting. So then there's also the legendary Eye and Tentacle Tome. These you can only grind out once a week. And then there is the Mount, Wings. I have another video in the description showing all the wings as well. Maybe not some of the newest ones, but pretty much all of them outside of a few. And then the Mamunga, I want to keep in mind that the reason why this one actually costs 6 Lunar Souls is because this sucker is a gliding mount, very similar to the dragons as well, right? And then the Paragon wings are kind of supposed to be like Paragon. They're supposed to be prestigious wings. Even though it's not that you end up actually spending any prestige, it's just mostly you have to save for weeks and weeks and weeks to actually get enough Lunar Souls, right? Now, anyways, that's that. Let's get to the next round and see whether or not it's actually an arena. Aha! Yeah, see, so here's an arena. We ended up spawning in a little room up there. I took the portal and it just drops you right in. So this one, hopefully I'll be able to do. We might run into a little bit of trouble, but oh, okay, so there it is. There's only 5 waves. Rip me, not 8. So yeah, we gotta fight waves and waves of enemies all the way up to the end. And just a pro tip here, if you can even call it that, for late game players or people that are getting into hard mode and stuff like that. You see that little toilet enemy right there? The one that's supposed to be like a waffle iron right here, this is actually the strongest, hardest hitting enemy in the entire game. When you actually get up to the Ultra Towers, every bomb that he does is going to one-shot you. Unless you're a tank and you have like over 1 million health, which, I mean, you know, you don't really end up having that many people that have that, right? But needless to say, yeah, those guys are going to destroy you. So what you end up doing in the late game is everybody focuses on the toilet. You get that guy out of there as soon as possible. It's not because he's supposed to be that powerful. It's just because the damage numbers are so like uncalculated and just weird, right? So actually we got through that in a breeze. Like seriously, that was no problem. I'll skip this next round and get up to the boss though, so that you can see, because the Titan bosses themselves, that's what they're called, they're actually very, very impressive and very cool. Of course, you know, on my PC series, I've fought all of these guys plenty of times, and I do it in live streams and stuff like that, although it's been a long time since I live stream. But needless to say, if you want to see them, you can see them in the series, or if you don't want to spoil them, don't worry, we're only going to do Spike Walker for today, and it's honestly going to take me a very long time before we get up to the other bosses. Oh, and another quick tip that I just want to give, just because that's kind of how Trove ends up working. If you're sitting here and you're playing this game with your friend and you're trying to play as a tank and you're wondering why you don't actually take aggro, sorry to say, folks, that this game unfortunately doesn't have any type of depth to the combat system, let alone any strategies or anything like that. Honestly speaking, once you get to the end game, most of it just has to do with exploits to the AI, because otherwise, the way that the AI, if you can even call it that, ends up working in this game is the enemies are pretty much always going to target the furthest person. So usually what'll end up happening on the PC version anyways, is somebody might end up getting weak and at one hit, and then they're running around trying to stay alive, not realizing that they're luring all the enemies around and everybody else is having to chase them down, right? So that's just kind of how this game ends up working. It's very disappointing that there isn't actually an aggro stat or anything like that. The Revenant kind of has aggro on one of his abilities, but honestly speaking, the AI is so poor in this game that you can't really rely on it. I just wanted to give that as a heads up, but honestly speaking, if you in order to get aggro on one person, like your tank or something, everybody's gonna have to stop attacking so that all the enemies focus on the tank just because he's the only one attacking them, and then everybody can start attacking. Now, needless to say, let's just get this right over with. Spike Walker, go! Oh my goodness, I thought he was gonna break my game. We might not even be able to see the coolness of this guy. When he does that move right there, usually it's glitched, where as you saw, we didn't end up taking any damage from him. But for the most part, what you can end up doing, I think anyways, let me try and figure it out if he ends up doing it again, is just dodging it by rolling like we're doing right there. Otherwise, he leaves spikes on the ground, which I really hope this isn't the old version of Trove, but needless to say, folks, in the older version, all the spikes that he's putting on the ground would pretty much last indefinitely, and if you can't beat Spike Walker or lose or something like that, you would start the next round and all of the spikes would still be there, and it eventually made Spike Walker impossible just because of that. However, in the PC version, which I'm still trying to see if those spikes are gonna disappear, because this might actually be that old version where the spikes don't disappear. Yeah, I think it might actually be. Oh no, there we go. They're despawning. Okay, good. So ignore everything that I was just saying, because otherwise, yeah, they did end up changing that a little bit later down the line, where they end up actually, like, the spikes will actually despawn. Now, the other thing too, when he kind of curls up into a ball and does that explosion effect, you're gonna have to most of all only watch out when he actually gets to half health, because he's gonna explode and then he's gonna roll in whatever direction the player is that he wants, and you gotta wait until he completely comes out of his animation, because otherwise he's going to end up still hitting you even though it looks like he's safe to hit, right? Now, this is the boss chest that I was talking about, and unfortunately I don't have any shadow keys with me, and there's no crafting tables in here for some dumb reason, so rip me, I can't actually craft a shadow key. Sorry, I can't show you this. But needless to say, once you end up using a key, you open this chest, it's going to give you, I think, like 6 or 7 pieces of gear, which tend to have a better chance of being higher quality, but not really, just because of how random the game is. However, Depending on the boss that you're actually fighting, like Spikewalker, for example, there's a rare chance that this chest can actually contain a Spikewalker mount. Not to mention the shadow shards that I had mentioned earlier at the Shadowy merchant that you can end up getting, right? But now that we ended up defeating Spikewalker, I just want to show you this real quick. You have to craft the the shadow keys at the adventurer's crafting table, as I did mention. But now we actually have one Titan soul, which, man alive, really? We only got one? So that means I would have to be able to defeat Weeping Prophet and the Pinata God in order to actually even get enough to get a Titan's treasure. I guess I'm not getting that this week. But yeah, needless to say, that's the Shadow Towers in a nutshell, everybody. You can end up rerunning them, but honestly speaking, there's not really much point. And if you're wondering about the fast times right there, those don't really do anything. The only time that matters, if you could even say that, is if you get the top 100 speed run time for beating Ultra Daughter of the Moon. You will actually have a purple name hovering over your head for other players for that week. And then if you want to get it next week, you just got to get top 100 again. And as I said again, most everybody that ends up actually getting that speed run time either has an insanely powerful group that just completely annihilates the boss like really, really fast, or they just simply use exploits that end up doing it. But anyways, this video has gone long enough. I just wanted to kind of explain the Shadow Towers in a bit more detail though, folks. And then otherwise, what's the other thing too? Now they want me to go and do a dragon challenge, which I did explain already in another video. And not to mention, again, I got dragon challenge tutorials and stuff like that. So I'm going to go and grind this next part out myself. And have a fantastic day, everybody. Very much appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. Sayonara and stay epic.